Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a topic that, honestly, you probably wouldn't have survived in the past: the brutal reality of being a peasant. Seriously, if you think your job is tough, try doing it when your life depended on the whims of a lord, the unpredictable fury of nature, and the constant gnawing hunger in your belly. Tonight, we're going to dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and ease into a journey through history where life was, well, an unending labyrinth of labor. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's begin. You're waking up, not to the gentle chime of an alarm, but to the first faint glimmer of dawn filtering through a crack in the rough-hewn timbers of your tiny hut. The year is, let's say, 1250, and you're in a small, nameless village nestled somewhere in the fertile lands that would one day become Ohio, or perhaps the rugged foothills of what would become Appalachia. Forget cozy blankets and a warm breakfast. The air bites with the chill of morning, and your bed is a straw-filled sack on a dirt floor. Your first thought isn't about coffee. It's about the sheer, unyielding demand of the day ahead. As a peasant, your life is inextricably tied to the land. You are, in essence, a human cog in a vast agricultural machine. Your days, from before sunup until long after sundown, are dictated by the seasons, the weather, and the relentless needs of the crops and livestock. You step outside, the damp earth cold beneath your rough homemade shoes, and the first chore begins. It could be milking the cow, a scrawny beast that represents a significant portion of your family's meager wealth. Or perhaps it's feeding the few scraggly chickens, whose eggs are a precious commodity. Every single task is a critical piece of the survival puzzle. There's no hitting the snooze button. The animals won't wait. Now, imagine the sheer physical exertion. You're not just tending a small garden plot, you're toiling in vast open fields owned by the local lord. You're plowing the earth, not with a tractor, but with a team of oxen, if you're lucky, or more likely, pulling the heavy wooden plow yourself alongside your family members. The soil is stubborn, rocky, and unforgiving. Your muscles ache, your hands are calloused and cracked, and the sun beats down relentlessly on your back. There's no air-conditioned office, no ergonomic chair. Your office is the sprawling, untamed wilderness, and your tools are rudimentary and back-breaking. This isn't just work, it's a test of endurance, every single day. Let's talk about the monotony. Season after season, year after year, your life revolves around the same cycle: sowing, cultivating, harvesting. In spring, you're planting seeds, hoping against hope for good weather and a bountiful yield. In summer, you're weeding, tending, and praying for rain, but not too much. In autumn, it's the intense, exhausting rush of harvesting, bringing in every last grain, every last vegetable, before the winter chill sets in. And in winter, you're trying to survive on what you've stored, repairing tools, and preparing for the next cycle. It's like living inside a perpetual calendar. But with every day marked by physical toil, you wouldn't want to show up to the fields with soft hands. Let me tell you, your diet, if you're fortunate, consists primarily of coarse bread, gruel, a thin porridge, and whatever vegetables you can grow. Meat is a rare luxury, reserved for feast days or after a successful hunt, though hunting on the Lord's land could be a risky endeavor. Your meals are not culinary delights, they are fuel, designed to provide just enough energy to keep your body moving. You're constantly teetering on the edge of malnutrition, your body crying out for more. Imagine being perpetually hungry, the sensation a constant companion, a dull ache in your stomach that never truly goes away. Historians still debate the precise caloric intake and nutritional deficiencies of the average medieval peasant, but all agree it was a precarious existence. Consider the tools of your trade. You don't have power tools or modern machinery? You have a hoe, a scythe, a hand plow, all fashioned from wood and a bit of metal. If you're lucky enough to afford it, these tools are heavy, inefficient, and often break. requiring precious time and skill to repair. Every furrow, every cut, every swing of the axe is done with raw human power. It's a testament to sheer willpower and necessity that anything was accomplished at all. It's like building a skyscraper with only a shovel and a wheelbarrow. And then there's the unpredictability. A sudden hailstorm can flatten your crops, wiping out your entire year's labor. A prolonged drought can parch the fields, leaving your family on the brink of starvation. A virulent disease among your livestock can decimate your herd, eliminating your meager source of protein and income. You are entirely at the mercy of nature with no crop insurance and no government subsidies, just the raw, unforgiving elements. It's like trying to run a business where the market crashes every other week, and you have no safety net whatsoever. Your small community, perhaps just a few dozen families, works together, sharing resources and labor where they can. But even here, life is a constant competition for survival. You might help your neighbor during harvest, knowing they will reciprocate, but a bad season means everyone suffers. There's no escaping the collective fate of the village. It's a harsh form of interdependence where everyone is just one bad harvest away from disaster. Evenings offer little respite. After a grueling day in the fields, you return to your cramped hut. There's no electricity, no books for leisure reading, no entertainment beyond simple storytelling or the occasional visit from a traveling minstrel. Your nights are short, punctuated by the sounds of the village and the gnawing anxieties of tomorrow. You fall asleep quickly, your body exhausted, only to wake before dawn and begin the arduous cycle anew. It's like having a perpetual sleep deficit, where rest is a fleeting luxury, not a consistent reality. So, as you reflect on the endless labor, the constant hunger, and the raw physical demands of a peasant's life, you begin to understand that this wasn't just a way of living. It was a constant, grueling battle for survival. There was no work-life balance, no personal time, just the unending demand to produce enough to feed yourself and your family, and to satisfy the demands of your lord. It makes you profoundly grateful for the comfort of your bed, the food in your fridge, and the choice to simply rest when you're tired. You're still in that world of unrelenting labor, perhaps now in a small, isolated hamlet deep within the forests of what will one day become Vermont, or nestled beside a sluggish river that will be called the Mississippi. The year is indeterminate, a blend of centuries from the high Middle Ages to early colonial settlements. You've just finished a meager breakfast of watery gruel, and the relentless ache in your stomach serves as a constant, unwelcome reminder of the second great terror of peasant life hunger's haunting shadow. Forget about 3 square meals a day or worries about your carb intake. Your primary dietary concern is simply getting enough calories to survive. Every single day, you are engaged in a desperate, often losing battle against scarcity. The concept of a fully satiated belly is a distant, almost mythical dream. You are constantly on the edge. One bad harvest, one prolonged drought, one unusually harsh winter away from outright starvation. It's like playing a game of Russian roulette with your dinner table. And the odds are never in your favor. Imagine the harvest season, the most critical time of the year. You've toiled for months, your body aching, your hope clinging to the green shoots in the fields. The grain is ripe, ready to be brought in. But then a sudden, relentless rain sets in, day after day, turning the fields into a muddy swamp. Or perhaps a plague of locusts descends, devouring everything in their path. You watch, helpless, as your entire year's labor, your family's very survival, literally washes away or is eaten before your eyes. The gnawing fear intensifies, a cold dread settling in your bones, knowing that winter is coming and your food stores are alarmingly, catastrophically low. This isn't just a bad quarter for the economy. This is a death sentence for your family. Even when the harvest is good, you face the demands of your lord. A significant portion of your crops, sometimes a third, sometimes half, or even more must be given to him as rent or tithes. You work his lands, and for that privilege, you pay him in grain, livestock, or forced labor. This means that even with a decent harvest, your own family might still be struggling. You literally feed your lord before you adequately feed your own children. It's like being forced to pay exorbitant taxes on food you grew with your own hands, knowing that every bushel given away means less for your hungry family. Now, consider the lack of dietary diversity. Your meals are monotonous, dominated by grains. Think oats, barley, rye, perhaps some coarse wheat if you're lucky. You might have some lentils or peas, and if you can forage, some wild berries or mushrooms. Vegetables are seasonal and limited. Protein, beyond the occasional egg or a scrawny chicken, is incredibly rare. Imagine eating essentially the same bland, coarse meal, day after day, year after year. Your body aches for nutrients it rarely receives. This isn't about craving variety. It's about the very real physical toll of an unbalanced diet, leading to chronic weakness, poor health, and susceptibility to disease. Historians still debate the extent of specific nutrient deficiencies, but evidence points to widespread issues like scurvy and rickets due to lack of vitamins. Let's talk about the children. You're a parent, constantly worried. Your children's bellies are often distended from hunger, their eyes dull, they are smaller, weaker, and more susceptible to illness than modern children. You know that if the food runs out, they will be the first to suffer, the first to succumb. The despair of being unable to feed your own child, of watching them wither away from hunger, is a profound, soul-crushing agony that no parent should ever have to endure. It's like seeing your child slowly fade away, with nothing you can do to stop it. You wouldn't want to show up to the family table empty-handed. Imagine the cunning and desperation required for foraging and poaching. If the fields aren't enough, you might venture into the Lord's forests, risking severe punishment, even death, to snare a rabbit. Catch a fish, or gather nuts and berries. Every wild edible becomes a precious treasure. This isn't a leisurely nature walk. It's a high-stakes gamble for survival, with armed guards and brutal laws standing between you and a meager meal. It's like trying to grab a quick snack from a heavily guarded vault. Knowing failure means dire consequences. The concept of food preservation was rudimentary. You might dry grain, salt some meat if you had any, or pickle a few vegetables. But without refrigeration or modern canning techniques, food spoiled quickly. A bumper crop in autumn could easily rot away before winter was over, leaving you empty-handed by spring. The constant battle against spoilage was as challenging as the battle against blight or drought. It's a race against time, and time is often the victor. Consider the hungry gap, that agonizing period in late spring or early summer, just before the new harvest, when last year's stores are almost entirely depleted. This was often the leanest, most dangerous time for peasants. Food prices would skyrocket, if there was any food to buy at all. People would resort to eating roots, bark, or whatever scraps they could find. Their bodies weakened, their resistance low. This was the moment of maximum vulnerability. When many perished, it's like running a marathon on an empty stomach, knowing the finish line is still miles away. So, as you feel that phantom ache in your own stomach, imagining the relentless hunger of the peasant, you begin to grasp the sheer brutality of their existence. Their lives were a continuous struggle against starvation, a constant negotiation with the very limits of human endurance. It makes you profoundly grateful for every meal on your table, every snack in your pantry, and the simple, profound comfort of knowing where your next meal is coming from. You're still stuck in the unforgiving past, the gnawing hunger a constant companion. But now a new, invisible terror looms large diseases' daily dread. Forget modern sanitation, vaccines, or even a basic understanding of germs. In this era, every cough, every fever, every cut was a potential death sentence, turning your already precarious life into a constant gamble with unseen forces. Imagine you're living in a small, crowded village, perhaps in a region that would one day become rural Pennsylvania in the 14th century. The air is thick with the scent of unwashed bodies, wood smoke, and animal waste. Clean drinking water is a luxury, often drawn from a communal well or river that also serves as a dumping ground for waste. The concept of hand washing is utterly unknown. Every surface, every touch, every breath carries the risk of infection. It's like living in a giant petri dish, where the invisible threats are everywhere, and you have no idea they even exist. Consider the sheer lack of medical knowledge. You wake up one morning with a severe fever and chills. There's no doctor to call, no emergency room to rush to. Your family might try folk remedies, a poultice of herbs, a concoction brewed from roots, or perhaps a prayer to the local saint. The physician, if one exists in a nearby town, might subscribe to the theory of humors, believing your illness is caused by an imbalance of bodily fluids. He might recommend bloodletting, cutting a vein to drain bad blood, or apply leeches, leaving you weaker and more susceptible to further infection. It's like trying to fix a complex machine when you don't even know how it works. And your tools are just as likely to cause more damage. Let's talk about the constant threat of epidemics. A single traveler passing through your village could bring with them a deadly plague. Imagine the sheer terror as the Black Death sweeps across Europe in the mid-1300s. Decimating populations. One day, your neighbor is healthy. The next, they are covered in gruesome swellings and succumb within days. You watch helpless as your family members fall ill, one by one. There is no escape, no quarantine, no vaccine. The best you can do is pray and hope that the unseen terror passes you by. It's like living in a horror movie, but the monster is invisible and relentless. Historians still debate the exact mortality rates of the Black Death in specific regions, but estimates suggest it wiped out between 30% to 60% of Europe's population, profoundly altering society. Infant and child mortality rates were astronomically high. You're a mother in a nascent settlement in Plymouth Colony during the early 1600s. You've given birth to several children, but perhaps only half of them have survived past their 5th birthday. Diseases like smallpox, diphtheria, measles, and whooping cough were rampant, often claiming the lives of multiple children from the same family in quick succession. Imagine the emotional toll, the constant grief, the fear that every new baby you brought into the world might not live to see adulthood. Your heart hardens, perhaps, as a coping mechanism, but the pain of loss is an ever-present shadow. You wouldn't want to show up to the family gathering and count empty chairs. Consider the challenges of poor hygiene. You might only bathe a few times a year, if at all, especially in colder climates where heating water was an arduous task. Your clothes are rarely washed, and personal sanitation is primitive. Vermin, like fleas and lice, are common, contributing to the spread of diseases like typhus. Your teeth are likely decaying, leading to constant pain and infection, with no dentist to help. The overall level of cleanliness is shocking by modern standards, creating a fertile ground for every kind of pathogen imaginable. It's like living in a constant state of mild discomfort and grime, with the added bonus of deadly consequences. Even a simple injury could turn fatal. You're a farmer, perhaps in rural Missouri in the 1700s, and you cut your hand while working with a scythe. There are no antiseptics, no antibiotics. The wound quickly becomes infected, swelling and oozing pus. Without intervention, gangrene sets in, and the infection spreads throughout your body. Your limb might need to be amputated, a brutal procedure performed without anesthetic, or you could simply die from blood poisoning. A minor mishap becomes a life-or-death situation, reminding you of the fragility of your existence. So, as you imagine the constant aches, the pervasive smells, and the ever-present threat of invisible killers, you begin to grasp the sheer vulnerability of life in the past. Every breath was a gamble, every interaction a potential exposure, and every symptom a harbinger of doom. It makes you profoundly grateful for running water, soap, and the wonders of modern medicine that we often take for granted. You're still trapped in the past, constantly battling hunger and disease, but now you face an equally formidable and often more oppressive, force lordship's heavy hand. Forget about personal freedoms, democratic rights, or even a sense of fair play. In this feudal world, your life, your labor, and your very existence are dictated by the arbitrary will of the local lord, who holds absolute power over your destiny. Imagine you're a peasant in a vast feudal estate in medieval France, around the 11th century, or perhaps a tenant farmer on a sprawling plantation in colonial Virginia in the early 1700s. Your land, the very soil you toil upon, isn't yours. It belongs to the lord of the manor, who, in exchange for protection and the right to live on his land, demands an enormous price. This isn't just rent, it's a systematic, often brutal, extraction of your labor and resources. Your primary duty, beyond feeding your own family, is to work the Lord's lands, the domain. You might spend several days a week, sometimes even more, toiling in his fields, planting his crops, harvesting his grain, all before you can even touch your own small plot. This isn't paid work, it's forced labor, a direct tax on your time and energy. You watch your own crops languish while you ensure your lord's granaries are full. It's like having a job where your boss takes 70% of your salary and then demands you work overtime for free. Consider the various fees and taxes that constantly chipped away at your meager existence. You wanted to grind your grain into flour. You had to use the Lord's mill and pay a fee, often a portion of your precious grain. You wanted to bake bread. You used the Lord's oven and paid another fee. You needed to press olives or grapes. The Lord's press, another fee. Even marriage might require payment to the Lord, known as merchant, as he controlled who could marry on his land. Every aspect of your life was monetized. Every basic necessity an opportunity for your Lord to extract more from you. It's like living in a world where everything, including the air you breathe, comes with a hidden tax. Now, let's talk about justice. There's no impartial court system, no due process. The Lord, or his appointed bailiff, is the law. If you committed a transgression, perhaps you poached a rabbit from his forest, a desperate attempt to feed your starving family, or argued with his overseer, you faced the Lord's court. Punishments could be swift and brutal fines that would cripple your family, public humiliation, physical beatings, or even mutilation. Your word meant nothing against the Lord's, and any appeal was virtually impossible. It's like living under a judicial system where the judge, jury, and executioner are all the same person, and that person owns everything you possess. Imagine the sheer indignity and lack of personal freedom. You cannot leave the manor without the Lord's permission. If you attempt to flee, you might be hunted down and severely punished. Your children are also bound to the land, perpetuating the cycle of servitude. You are, in essence, a fixture of the landscape, tied to the soil, with little more freedom than the livestock you tend. It's like being born into a perpetual state of indentured servitude, with no hope of breaking free. What about the constant threat of military conscription? While not always formal, if the Lord was called to war by his king, you might be forced to serve as an untrained foot soldier, armed with rudimentary weapons, and sent to die in a conflict that had nothing to do with your life. Your farm would be left untended, your family vulnerable, all for the Lord's ambition. You were cannon fodder, your life deemed expendable for his glory. Historians still debate the extent of peasant participation in medieval warfare, differentiating between professional soldiers and levied peasants, but the impact on communities was always severe. Consider the arbitrary nature of the Lord's power. He could demand additional labor for special projects, like building a new castle wall or clearing a forest, regardless of the impact on your own crops or family needs. He could levy new taxes, raise existing ones, or impose new, bizarre rules, all at his whim. There was no negotiation, no protest, just obedience. Your life was subject to the changing moods and financial demands of a single, powerful individual. It's like having a boss who can change your job description, your salary, and your working hours without notice. And you have no union to protect you. Even your shelter wasn't truly yours. You lived in a hut built on the Lord's land, using his materials. If he decided to move you or demolish your dwelling, you had no legal recourse. Your very home was a temporary privilege, not a permanent right. It added another layer of precariousness to an already fragile existence. It's like living in a rental where the landlord can evict you on a moment's notice for no reason. So, as you ponder the heavy hand of the Lord, the forced labor, the arbitrary justice, and the constant extraction of your resources, you begin to understand that being a peasant was far more than just hard work. It was a life lived under constant subjugation, with virtually no personal autonomy, and every aspect of your existence dictated by a power far beyond your control. It makes you profoundly grateful for the freedoms we have today, for the rule of law, and for the right to own your own labor and your own home. You're still bound by the land and the Lord's heavy hand, but now, as dusk settles, you retreat to your most intimate, yet often most grueling. Space your home. This isn't the sanctuary you might envision. It's a place where the daily struggle continues, a testament to the harsh realities of peasant life. Welcome to home is where the hardship is. Imagine your dwelling, a small, cramped hut in a village that might one day be called Jamestown, Virginia, in the early 1600s, or perhaps a scattered settlement in the wilds of what would become Maine in the 13th century. It's likely a single-room structure, built from whatever local materials are available: rough-hewn timber, wattle and daub, a mixture of mud, straw and animal dung, and a thatched roof. There's no proper foundation, just a dirt floor that turns to mud in the rain and dust in the dry season. This isn't a cozy cabin, it's a rudimentary shelter, designed for bare survival. As you step inside, the first thing that hits you is the smoke. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof to let out some of the fumes from the central hearth, which serves as your only source of heat and light. Your eyes water, your throat aches, and the air is perpetually thick with acrid smoke. Every breath is a mild irritation, and over time, this constant exposure leads to chronic respiratory problems. It's like living in a perpetual campfire, but without the open sky. Now, consider the lack of privacy. This single room is where your entire family lives, sleeps, cooks, and carries out all daily activities. If you have children, they sleep beside you. If you have aging parents, they are there too. There are no separate bedrooms, no quiet corners for solitude. Every sneeze, every snore, every whispered conversation is shared. It's a constant, inescapable intimacy, often born more out of necessity than choice. It's like living in a single, large tent. But with all the stresses of life amplified, let's talk about your roommates, the livestock. It was common for peasant families to share their humble abode with their most valuable animals: a cow, a few sheep, perhaps some chickens. Why? To keep them safe from theft, to protect them from the harsh elements, and for the warmth their bodies provided in the freezing winter nights. Imagine waking up to the lowing of a cow, the clucking of chickens, and the pervasive smell of animal waste, all inside your living space. It's a stark reminder of how close humans and animals lived, a closeness driven by survival, not sentimentality. You wouldn't want to show up to the dinner table without properly cleaning your hands. Let me tell you, and what about the cold and damp? The walls are thin, the roof prone to leaks, and the dirt floor offers little insulation. In winter, the cold seeps into your bones, and even with a fire blazing, certain corners of the hut remain frigid. Dampness is a constant enemy, promoting illness and making life generally miserable. There's no central heating, no insulated windows, just the bare minimum to keep the elements at bay, and often failing even at that. It's like living in a drafty barn, but it's your only refuge. Historians still debate the precise construction techniques and materials used in different peasant dwellings across regions, but the general picture points to functional rather than comfortable structures. The furnishings are sparse and rudimentary. A rough wooden table, a few stools, perhaps a simple chest to hold your few precious possessions. Your bed is a pile of straw, often shared with other family members, and infested with fleas and lice. There are no closets, no dressers, no modern conveniences. Every item serves a practical purpose, and possessions are minimal, easily transported if you ever needed to flee. It's a minimalist lifestyle, forced upon you by circumstance, not by choice. Consider the constant battle against vermin. Mice, rats, fleas, lice, and other pests are ubiquitous. They infest your straw bedding, contaminate your meager food stores, and carry diseases. Despite your best efforts, controlling them is an almost impossible task. They are an ever-present nuisance, adding to the general discomfort and unsanitary conditions of your home. It's like having a perpetual, unwanted house party of uninvited guests, all of whom are vectors for disease. Even cooking was an ordeal. You're huddled around the central hearth, the smoke stinging your eyes. There are no precise temperature controls, no fancy pots and pans. You cook over an open flame, constantly monitoring, stirring, and trying to prevent your food from burning. Every meal is a labor-intensive process, from gathering firewood to preparing the raw ingredients. It's a constant exercise in culinary improvisation, driven by hunger and limited resources. So, as you imagine the cramped space, the smoky air, the animal smells, and the pervasive cold, you begin to grasp that the peasant home was less a haven and more a continuation of the day's hardships. It was a place where survival was paramount, and comfort was a luxury rarely afforded. It makes you profoundly grateful for insulated walls, indoor plumbing, and the simple, silent peace of your own private space. You're nestled in your humble dwelling, perhaps sharing it with a cow or two, the smoke from the hearth stinging your eyes. But beyond the physical hardships, another powerful, all-encompassing force dictates your life the grim grip of God and church. Forget about modern secularism or personal interpretations of faith. In this historical landscape, religion wasn't a choice. It was the bedrock of existence, a pervasive influence that touched every aspect of your daily life, your fears and your hopes. Imagine you're a peasant in medieval Europe, say in a small village in what would become Missouri, where the local parish church, however modest, is the most imposing building for miles around. It's not just a place of worship, it's the center of your community, the arbiter of moral conduct, and often, the only source of knowledge beyond your immediate village. You are told, constantly, that your life of toil and hardship is God's will, a test of your piety for a better afterlife. This spiritual framework, while offering a sense of purpose, also served to reinforce the existing social hierarchy. Your suffering on earth was presented as a pathway to salvation. It's like being told your endless chores are actually helping you win the lottery in the next life. Your week revolves around the church. Sunday Mass is not optional. It's a mandatory attendance, a public display of your devotion. You sit on hard benches, listening to sermons, often delivered in Latin, a language you don't understand, but whose moral imperatives are translated for you. You confess your sins, seek absolution, and participate in rituals that have been performed for centuries. The fear of eternal damnation is very real, a terrifying prospect instilled from childhood. You live in a world where God's judgment is absolute, and the church holds the keys to your salvation. It's a constant spiritual pressure, far more intense than any modern guilt trip. Now, consider the tithes. This wasn't just a voluntary offering, it was a mandatory tax. Typically 1/10 of your entire produce or income, paid directly to the church. Imagine, after all your grueling labor, after giving a significant portion of your harvest to the Lord, you then had to surrender another substantial share to the local priest. This was often paid in kind, sacks of grain, eggs, livestock, further depleting your already meager stores. This heavy financial burden was justified as necessary for your spiritual well-being and the maintenance of God's house. It's like paying a heavy income tax, but the service you're receiving is entirely metaphysical. Let's talk about superstition. In a world where scientific understanding was minimal, every unexplained phenomenon was attributed to divine intervention, good or evil. A bountiful harvest might be seen as a blessing, a terrible blight as God's wrath, or the work of mischievous spirits. You might hang charms in your hut to ward off evil, offer prayers to specific saints for protection against illness. or believe in local folk tales about fairies and goblins. These beliefs, often intertwined with Christian doctrine, shaped your daily decisions and fears. It's like living in a constant state of magical realism, where the line between the natural and the supernatural is constantly blurred. The church also controlled the calendar of your life. Holy days, saints' days, and religious festivals punctuated the relentless cycle of labor, offering brief, welcome respites from work. These were times for communal celebration, feasting if you could afford it, and reinforcing social bonds. But even these holidays were dictated by the church, their meaning rooted in religious tradition. Your rhythm of life was set by the liturgical year, rather than by personal choice or modern weekends. You wouldn't want to skip church on a feast day. Let me tell you, imagine the moral policing. The church, through its priests and local elders, exerted immense influence over personal conduct. Adultery, premarital sex, blasphemy, or even excessive drinking could lead to public penance, fines, or excommunication. A terrifying punishment that severed your ties with the community, and it was believed, with God himself. There was no escaping the watchful eyes of your neighbors and the stern judgment of the church. It's like living in a small town where everyone knows your business, and sins are publicly broadcast. Even moments of great personal transition, birth, marriage, death, were entirely governed by the church. You were baptized in the church, married by the priest, and buried in the churchyard. These rites of passage were not just family events, they were sacred rituals, binding you further to the church's authority and traditions. Your life's journey was mapped out by religious decree, from cradle to grave. So, as you feel the weight of spiritual expectations, the fear of divine retribution, and the constant demand for your resources, you begin to understand that the church was far more than a place of worship for the medieval peasant. It was an all-encompassing institution that provided comfort, fear, community, and control, shaping every single aspect of their hardscrabble lives. It makes you profoundly grateful for the freedom of belief, the separation of church and state, and the simple fact that your weekly contributions are generally voluntary. You're trying to eke out a living under the watchful eye of your Lord and the demanding gaze of the church. But now, an even more terrifying, unpredictable force sweeps through your life, one that can instantly undo all your hard work and plunge your family into utter ruin war's unwanted welcome. Forget about distant conflicts reported on the news. For the peasant, war came directly to your doorstep, a brutal and often senseless destroyer. Imagine you're a peasant farmer in Alsace-Lorraine in the 17th century, a region perpetually caught between the ambitions of French and German powers, or perhaps in colonial New York during the French and Indian War. You've spent years clearing land, tilling the soil, building your humble home. Then suddenly, when word arrives, an army is on the march. It might be your own lord's forces, requisitioning supplies and men, or it might be an invading enemy. Either way, for you, the outcome is often the same devastation. Your fields, which represent your family's entire livelihood, are the first casualty. Armies, whether friendly or hostile, need to be fed. Your crops, ready for harvest, might be trampled underfoot by marching soldiers and cavalry, or foraged wholesale to feed thousands of hungry mouths. Imagine watching your meticulously cultivated barley, your precious wheat, being stripped away or utterly destroyed in a matter of hours. The very foundation of your survival, gone. It's like having your entire bank account emptied, and then the bank itself is set on fire. Now, consider your livestock, your few cows, your sheep, your pigs. They are vital assets, providing milk, wool, and meat. But to a hungry army, they are simply provisions. Your animals might be slaughtered on the spot to feed the troops, or driven off to supply their camps. This isn't just a financial loss, it's the loss of your future, your ability to feed your family, and your only real source of wealth. It's a profound, immediate impoverishment, often leaving you with nothing but the clothes on your back. Let's talk about your home. Your small, cramped hut, already a struggle to maintain, offers no defense against marauding soldiers. They might torch your dwelling for warmth, for sport, or simply to deny shelter to the enemy. Your meager possessions, your tools, your cooking pots, your few blankets could be looted or destroyed. You might return to find your home a smoldering ruin, with nowhere to shelter your family from the elements. It's like losing your house, your car, and all your belongings in an instant, with no insurance or emergency relief. Historians still meticulously trace the routes of historical armies, often using peasant petitions and local records to document the widespread destruction and disruption they caused. And what about the danger to your family? Women face the terrifying threat of violence, including rape, from soldiers. Men might be forcibly conscripted into service, or killed if they resisted. Children were vulnerable to starvation, disease, or being orphaned. There was no safe zone, no protected civilian status. Your village, however insignificant it seemed on a map, became a battlefield, and your family, collateral damage. It's a chilling reminder that, for the peasant, war was intensely personal, a direct threat to life and limb. Imagine being caught in the actual conflict. You might be forced to serve as a laborer, digging trenches, building fortifications, or transporting supplies for the army. You could be pressed into service as a scout or a guide, risking your life for a cause you don't understand. Or you might simply be in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in the crossfire of a battle, your life extinguished in an instant by a stray arrow or a cannonball. You were expendable, a footnote in a larger military campaign. You wouldn't want to show up to the battlefield without a very good hiding spot. Let me tell you, even if your village wasn't directly in the path of an army, the effects of war still permeated your life. Trade routes would be disrupted, making it impossible to sell your meager surplus or acquire essential goods. Taxes from your lord would likely increase to fund his military endeavors, further squeezing your already tight finances. The simple act of traveling to a nearby market could become incredibly dangerous due to wandering bands of soldiers or desperate brigands. Your entire world, already fragile, became even more unstable and unpredictable. It's like trying to run a small business in a country experiencing hyperinflation and a collapsing infrastructure. So, as you envision the fear, the devastation, and the utter helplessness of the peasant caught in the grip of war, you realize that for them, conflict was not a distant political event. It was a direct, visceral threat that could, in a single season, wipe out generations of hard work and condemn entire families to destitution or death. It makes you profoundly grateful for the relative peace and stability we experience today, and for the concept of civilian protection in times of conflict. You're trying to recover from the devastation of war. But another, more insidious form of oppression shadows your life the stark reality of education's empty echo. Forget about schools, libraries, or even the simple act of reading a book. For the vast majority of peasants, knowledge beyond the immediate demands of their daily labor was simply out of reach, trapping them in a cycle of ignorance and limited opportunity. Imagine you're a young child in a small, isolated village in rural Appalachia during the 18th century. Or perhaps a scattered settlement in the wilds of what would become Oklahoma in the 13th century. Your classroom isn't a building with desks and chalkboards. It's the fields, the hut, and the communal spaces where life unfolds. Your teachers are your parents and elders, passing down the practical skills necessary for survival. You learn to plow, to sow, to harvest, to milk a cow, to mend clothes, to cook over an open fire. These are vital skills, but they are focused entirely on physical labor and immediate needs, not on intellectual development. It's like being trained for one specific, arduous job from birth, with no other career paths ever presented. Consider the concept of literacy. For most peasants, reading and writing were completely unknown. There were no books, no newspapers, no printed materials to be found in your home. Information was passed down orally, through stories, songs, and communal gossip. Imagine living in a world where you couldn't read a simple sign, or write a letter to a loved one, or even understand the written laws that governed your life. You are entirely dependent on others to interpret the written word, making you vulnerable to manipulation and control. It's like living in a society where everyone else speaks a secret language, and you're always trying to catch up. Historians still meticulously analyze various forms of medieval literacy, pointing out that even if peasants couldn't read, they often had a rich oral culture and could read their environment and social cues with great skill. Now, think about the tools of learning. There are no slates, no paper, no pens. If, by some miracle, you encountered someone who could write, their tools would be precious and expensive parchment made from animal skin, ink derived from natural dyes, and quills from bird feathers. The very act of writing was a skilled craft, reserved for scribes, monks, and the elite. Your hands, accustomed to rough farm implements, would find such delicate tools alien and impractical. It's like trying to navigate the internet without a keyboard or a screen, relying solely on someone else to describe it to you. Let's talk about the purpose of education. For the ruling class, education often through the church was about maintaining power, preserving knowledge religious and secular, and managing their estates. For the peasant, formal education was seen as unnecessary, even potentially dangerous. An educated peasant might question the existing social order, desire more than their allotted lot, or become dissatisfied with their place. Keeping the peasantry unlettered was a powerful tool of social control, ensuring their subservience and preventing widespread dissent. It's a deliberate withholding of the keys to advancement, designed to keep you in your place. Imagine the sheer monotony of knowledge. Your world is your village, the fields, and the seasonal cycle. You know the names of the local plants, the behavior of the animals, the rhythm of the weather, and the dictates of your lord and priest. But beyond that, your understanding of the wider world is incredibly limited. News of distant lands, great discoveries, or intellectual debates simply doesn't reach you. Your intellectual horizons are as narrow as the dirt path leading to your hut. You wouldn't want to show up to the local debate without knowing the current price of grain, let me tell you. Even if there was a local priest who could read, his literacy was primarily for religious texts, not for broad secular learning. He might read from the Bible, but interpretations were controlled, and critical thinking was not encouraged. The church, while preserving knowledge, also acted as a gatekeeper, determining what information reached the masses and how it was understood. It's like having access to a single book, but only certain chapters are read to you, and only one person is allowed to explain what they mean. The lack of education perpetuated the cycle of poverty. Without literacy or specialized skills, your options for employment were severely limited to manual labor. There was no path to becoming a merchant, a craftsman unless you were apprenticed, a rare opportunity, a scholar, or anything beyond your birth status. Your future was largely predetermined by your lack of access to knowledge. Trapping generations in the same arduous existence, it's like running a race where everyone else has a head start, and you're forced to run barefoot on a rocky path. So as you reflect on the absence of books, the silence of classrooms, and the narrow confines of peasant knowledge, you begin to grasp the profound disadvantage faced by those who lived without education. Their lives, while rich in practical skill and oral tradition, were intellectually limited, and their opportunities severely curtailed by the empty echo of learning. It makes you profoundly grateful for universal education, the internet, and the incredible world of knowledge that is now, for many, just a click away. You're walking through your village, the familiar sights and sounds a constant reminder of your place in the world. But beyond the physical hardships and the lack of knowledge, there's an unseen, unbreakable barrier that defines your entire existence. Social standing's stony straitjacket. Forget about social mobility, climbing the corporate ladder, or reinventing yourself. In this historical reality, you were born into a specific class, and for the vast majority of your kind, That's where you would die, trapping generations in a rigid, unyielding hierarchy. Imagine you're a peasant in medieval Europe, perhaps a serf bound to the land in what would become a quiet valley in Pennsylvania. You are born into a family that has tilled the same soil, paid homage to the same lord, and lived in similar humble huts for generations. Your destiny is not something you choose, it's something you inherit. You are, quite literally, a part of the Lord's property, along with the land itself. There's no concept of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps here. Your boots, if you even have them, are stuck in the mud of predetermined fate. It's like being born into a caste system where your entire life's trajectory is set before you even take your first breath. Consider the absolute power of the feudal system. At the top, the king, then the great lords, followed by lesser nobles, knights, and finally, the vast, silent majority, the peasantry. You are at the bottom of this pyramid, the foundation upon which the entire edifice of society rests. Your labor supports everyone above you, yet you receive the least in return. There's no union, no collective bargaining, no legal representation to challenge this inherent inequality. Your position is fixed, ordained by birth and reinforced by law and custom. Historians still meticulously categorize the nuances of peasant status, from free peasants to serfs, acknowledging regional variations but emphasizing the pervasive lack of upward mobility for all. Now, think about the very real implications of this social stratification. Your marriage options are severely limited. You are expected to marry someone from your own class, often from your own village, ensuring the continuation of the peasant workforce. The idea of marrying into the gentry or nobility is not just unthinkable, it's a social impossibility, often punishable or outright forbidden. Love across class lines is a romantic fantasy, rarely a historical reality for those on the bottom rungs. It's like living in a strict social club where the membership rules are ironclad, and you're permanently on the lowest tier. Let's talk about justice, or the lack thereof. If a peasant was wronged by a noble, gaining true justice was almost impossible. The Lord's court was designed to protect the Lord's interests, not yours. Your testimony might be dismissed, your pleas ignored, and any attempts to appeal would be futile. Your rights, in essence, were whatever your Lord decided they were. You are vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and arbitrary punishment, with virtually no legal recourse. It's like trying to win a legal battle against a powerful corporation when they own the court, the judge, and all the lawyers. Imagine the psychological impact of knowing your place. From childhood, you are taught that this is your lot in life. Ambition, if it even flickers, is quickly extinguished by the harsh realities of your circumstances. You learn not to hope for too much, not to dream beyond the boundaries of your fields and your village. This ingrained sense of fatalism, while perhaps a coping mechanism, also acted as a powerful psychological barrier to any form of rebellion or desire for change. It's like being told from birth that you're only capable of walking, so you never even try to run. You wouldn't want to show up to the Lord's Hall with ideas above your station. Let me tell you, even your clothing, your diet, and your mannerisms were dictated by your social standing. You wore coarse wool or linen, ate simple gruel, and spoke with the regional dialect of your village. To attempt to mimic the clothing, the food, or the refined speech of the nobility would be seen as presumptuous, even rebellious, and likely met with ridicule or punishment. Every aspect of your outward appearance and behavior served as a clear marker of your low status. It's like being forced to wear a uniform that constantly reminds you of your rank, and everyone else can see it too. The rare instances of social mobility were often tied to exceptional circumstances, such as joining the church, though even here. The higher ranks were reserved for nobility or, in later periods, fleeing to a city and managing to gain a trade in a guild which was incredibly difficult for a former serf. These were exceptions, not rules, and the journey was fraught with danger and uncertainty. For the vast majority, the social straitjacket held firm, binding them to their birth status for life. So, as you ponder the invisible chains of social standing, the predetermined paths, and the crushing weight of a rigid hierarchy, you begin to grasp that being a peasant was not just about physical hardship. It was about the profound lack of personal freedom, dignity, and opportunity. Your life was not your own to shape. It was a destiny pre-written by the very structure of society. It makes you profoundly grateful for the ideals of equality, for the opportunities for education and advancement, and for the freedom to choose your own path in life, no matter your background. You've traversed the harsh landscapes of peasant life, the back-breaking labor, the gnawing hunger, the pervasive diseases, the Lord's heavy hand, the cramped homes, the unyielding church, the sudden terrors of war, the absence of education, and the suffocating grip of social class. It's a bleak picture, a testament to sheer human resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. But now, as our journey through the medieval muck and misery draws to a close, let's allow ourselves a moment for a glimmer, a grin, and a modern glance, acknowledging the small joys that still flickered in those dark times, the enduring human spirit, and the immense, undeniable improvements in life quality compared to the peasant's lot. Imagine, despite everything, the simple pleasure of a successful harvest. You're in a field, perhaps in what would one day become Iowa, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and purple, casting long shadows over the golden stalks of wheat. You've brought in a truly bountiful crop, enough to feed your family through the winter, with perhaps even a small surplus to trade. The relief, the profound sense of accomplishment is palpable. It's not about wealth or luxury, it's about the raw, visceral triumph over scarcity, a victory hard won against the odds. This feeling of collective achievement after a successful harvest, a moment of shared survival, would have been a deeply satisfying communal joy. Consider the simple warmth of the hearth fire on a freezing winter night. You're huddled with your family in your smoky hut, but the fire, however imperfectly vented, casts a flickering glow, chasing away the bone-deep chill. You might be sharing stories, perhaps a folk tale passed down through generations, or a whispered memory of a loved one. In a world devoid of artificial light and entertainment, the fire itself was a mesmerizing focal point, a symbol of life and protection against the elements. It's a simple pleasure, almost meditative, that we often overlook in our brightly lit, centrally heated homes. You really wouldn't want to show up to winter without a good pile of firewood? Let's talk about the small acts of community and camaraderie. Despite the competition for resources, peasants often relied on each other. You might help a neighbor whose cow was sick, knowing they would reciprocate when your own crops failed. Shared meals, even if meager, would have been moments of connection. The rhythms of life, from planting to harvesting, were often communal efforts, fostering a sense of shared destiny and mutual support. In a world where formal safety nets were non-existent, human connection was your ultimate insurance policy. It's like a perpetual neighborhood potluck, where everyone brings their small, hard-won contributions. And what about the deep, almost primal connection to the natural worldview? The peasant lived in intimate harmony with the land, the seasons, and the cycles of life and death. You understood the language of the winds, the signs of changing weather, the intricate dance of flora and fauna. While often brutal, this connection fostered a profound understanding of nature's power and beauty. You saw the universe unfold in your fields, in the forest, in the night sky unmarred by city lights. This visceral understanding of the natural world, a kind of inherited ecological wisdom, is something many of us today can only glimpse through a screen. Historians still extensively research the folk knowledge, agricultural techniques, and environmental understanding of medieval peasants, highlighting their sophisticated, albeit unwritten, wisdom. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of a skill mastered. You, as a peasant, were a jack of all trades, a master of survival. You could build a shelter, mend tools, spin wool, identify edible plants, and care for animals. Every task, however humble, required skill, patience, and ingenuity. There was a profound dignity in self-sufficiency, in knowing that your hands could provide for your family. This tangible connection to your labor, the direct result of your efforts, offered a different kind of fulfillment than many modern jobs. It's like being a master craftsman in every aspect of your life, where every creation is for your very survival. Now, take a deep breath and gently return to the present. Feel the soft hum of your fan, the warmth of your blanket. Consider the vast, almost unimaginable gulf between your life and that of the medieval peasant. We live in a world where food scarcity, while still a global issue, is not a daily existential threat for most in places like Haiduong, Vietnam, or rural Ohio. We have access to clean water, sanitation, and medical care that would have seemed miraculous to our historical counterparts. Disease, while still present, is largely manageable. We live in a society where education is a fundamental right, not a distant luxury. We have the freedom to choose our own paths, to pursue careers, to marry for love, to travel, to access information, and to express our opinions without fear of immediate retribution from an all-powerful lord. The brutal physical labor that defined peasant life has been largely replaced by technology. The constant fear of famine, plague, and arbitrary justice has been supplanted by relative stability and safety. While no society is perfect and challenges certainly remain, this journey through the awful reality of peasant life should leave you with a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the simple meal, the warm home, the access to knowledge, and the freedom to forge your own destiny. It's a reminder that even our modern struggles are built upon a foundation of progress that would have been unimaginable to those who toiled in the fields of centuries past. As the echoes of their hardships fade, let the gentle sounds of your own comfortable night settle around you. The world has changed so much, moving us far from those ancient struggles. Rest easy, knowing how far we've come.